Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife review. This will be my full take on the Ruike Knives P128sf. This knife is one that is new for 2017 from Ruike Knives, and it's one that I was pretty impressed with. When I first saw this design, I was like, hey, that's a good looking knife. In fact, I would say from a design standpoint, it's definitely my favorite of Ruike Knives up to this point. Let me say a couple of quick things by way of introduction, and then we'll get into the specifics of this knife. First off, I want to talk about the pronunciation, Ruike Knives. I had no idea how to say it, and so I really kind of felt for Frankie and Bird when they had the discussion on their channel a couple days ago. But thankfully, Matt from Ruike Knives Canada did send me an email explaining how to pronounce it. So that's why I was able to kind of figure out how to say the word, and have been doing that consistently. The other thing I've got to say, since we brought up Ruike Knives Canada, is thank you so much for sending a few knives over. It definitely helps the channel, and more importantly, it helps the viewers. These knives, these Ruike knives, are only here because a couple of viewers were messaging me both here on YouTube as well as over on Instagram and saying, hey, what's the story with these knives? Are they any good? I kind of like some of the designs, but I don't want to pull the trigger, without just knowing anything about them. And so I took that, I emailed Ruike Knives, and they were good enough to send me out a few for review and consideration. And overall, I've been really impressed with the quality that they're hitting. Now, I don't always love every single design that they've had. I think I mentioned on this one that, there are a couple little things I wasn't crazy about, but that the quality was absolutely there. And this one is the same. The quality is definitely there. The difference being that I actually really, really like this design. Now, that's going to be a subjective thing. So maybe you don't like this design, you like the other, or you like some other model. But what is sort of a measurable, objective thing is, are they putting together a decent knife? And certainly the answer to that is yes. Let's go ahead finally and get to size and weight. We're 2 minutes in, so I'm going to try to move a little bit quicker from this point on. So overall, guys, this is an 8.5 inch knife, so pretty nice size for everyday carry. The blade on this is 3 9/16 inches. The handle is 4 15/16, so just under 5 ounces. And the weight, now usually on a stainless steel frame lock, it's the weight that wrecks my day. But in this case, 5.6 ounces, which is not that bad at all, okay? Consider that's just a little bit more than a Rat Model 1, which I carry all the time, and I know many of you do as well, at 5.2 ounces. So no big issue at all with the weight on this guy. Yes, it's a little hefty for its size, but not a deal breaker whatsoever. And that's because if you take a look in here, you can see there, they have pretty heavily milled out this handle on both the show side and the lock side. So very, very appreciative of that. Now, let's go over to the blade. Blade on this guy is 14C28N steel, and I'm gonna say this, I've said it over and over again, 14C28N is definitely my favorite budget steel. It performs much better than, HCR13 or AUS8. In fact, I would compare it more in terms of my experience, and in fact, Cedric Ada Outdoors, sorry about that, has done a test where he found 14C28N performing almost to the same level as VG10. So really, really nice steel, and I wish it was more widely used. It used to be exclusively Kershaw's, but now they've kind of dropped that. And I'm kind of glad they did, because there's a bunch of different knives now using it. It's really, really nice steel. Harpoon shape here with a fairly high flat grind. There's a little bit of flat here, which is nice, especially if you're using a sharpener that has some kind of a vise on it that needs a flat surface to hold on to. Edge geometry is really nice, so it cuts really, really well. That's a little bit, there's a little bit of that Spyderco leaf shape influence going on here. The harpoon shape, the swedge on the top, just makes that look a little bit different, and I really, really like it. Now, I do have one little complaint about this blade. It's not the steel, it's not the performance. This is a pretty subjective thing, but I do wish it were in a satin finish rather than bead blast. Overall, I just find bead blast to be overly plain. Okay, I can imagine with the cool stuff going on here where the different angles, I could think, if you had satin grind lines going this way and different ones going that way and that way, it would just really, really set off this blade and make it look really cool. So I would wish that there was a satin finish on this blade rather than bead blast. But that's more of a subjective thing, and it's not really a deal breaker for me. Let's see, anything else I have to say about that? I think we can move on to the action, to the lockup and deployment, and that's really good. You know, overall, there's not too much I have to complain about on this knife. So it is a flipper, it flips really nicely. The detent is not crazy strong, but it's strong enough that reliably this knife will flip just every time you try it. And I don't know about you guys, but that's all I ask from my detent. It doesn't have to be super stiff for me. It just has to make the knife work. And in this case, it works really, really well. It is a stainless steel frame lock, so lock is very solid. Fairly late engagement, but that's pretty common. When you have steel on steel, that's not really an issue because it's not going to wear the same way that steel on titanium is going to wear. It has this secondary lock mechanism, which I'm not a fan of. And in this case, I think it detracts just a little from the design. Check out this side of the knife and notice how it's very clean, very smooth lines, almost kind of minimalist. But then if you flip the knife over, this side gets a little busy. And part of that is because of this, because the lock bar cutout is on the outside rather than the inside, and because of the cutouts in the clip. I would kind of wish that this were kind of simplified down so it matched this side a little bit better. Now obviously that has nothing to do with the function of the knife whatsoever. It's purely an aesthetic thing, but I just would like to see this simplified down a bit. Part of that would be getting rid of this secondary lock, which I literally never use. Except for on video, I have never flicked this on or off, okay? Yes, it does work. If I put it on, I can't unlock the knife, so therefore makes it harder to close on your fingers, but that's about all it's doing for you. Otherwise, lockup, deployment, total win. I literally have no complaints about it. It is on bearings, so it will drop closed for you really nicely and flip really nice and smooth. And the bearings are well done. You can't kind of feel them rolling around in there like you can on some budget knives that are on bearings. That's the action. What about the handle? Well, as we've said, it is a stainless steel frame lock. Now, a couple things that often plague stainless steel frame locks. One is they're often way, way heavy. This one is not that bad, as we've discussed. The other thing is they can be really, really slippery. And again, this one is not that bad. Now, it's not as grippy as I would maybe like to see. Some jimping here on the back spine would be really appreciated. Maybe some jimping under here somewhere just to give me a little bit of purchase. However, in use, here's how I kind of measure this. When I'm using this knife, am I afraid of dropping it? Okay, when I hand it to someone else to use, are they afraid of dropping it? And that has not been my experience with this knife. So the bead blast does provide enough sort of texture, enough grippiness that you can easily do whatever it is you want to do with the knife and have no fear of having it slip out of your hands, even if your hands are a little sweaty or it's a little rainy out or something like that. And I've also used this with gloves on and had no issues that way either. So in terms of the main big problems with stainless steel frame locks, this deals with both of them pretty well. As I say, it's a little heavy, but not the end of the world. In terms of the comfort on this guy, very, very good. In every grip you can think of, this knife works really, really well. Hammer grip, reverse grip, it's really, really well done. Just a bit of a swell there to fill in your hand and a nice finger choil to make you feel really locked in. I think the ergonomics on this guy are total win. Pocket clip is single position, deep carry clip, very reminiscent of the real steel clips. And so we know from quite a bit of experience that they work really well. And this one is in the same boat. Carries pretty deeply, carries very comfortably. So no issue with that, other than the fact that you're not going to switch it to the other side. Okay, so the handle is well done. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention the backspacer. It does have a G10 backspacer here. And I don't know, it works, so I'm not going to complain too much about it. Generally speaking, I'm in favor of standoff pillars for construction, but I can't really say that this has affected my use of the knife in any way, and I don't think it adds enough weight to really take away points for. So overall, really well done on the handle, just maybe a little bit slick. Let's see here. Let's get some comparisons in here, starting off with a couple of rake knives that I also happen to have with me. Here is the P128sf. Here is the P105. So Ruike Knives is doing some pretty cool designs this year. This one out of all of these is my least favorite. This one's pretty interesting. It's a little too small for me, but it's a very, very cool looking knife. This guy is a little too thick for me, but again, really, really well put together, flips really, really nicely, and I do absolutely love that blade shape. So both of these would certainly be options. And I think out of these three, this guy is going to be the most expensive. I think it's going to be around 50 bucks US, maybe 45. That translates to about $60, $65 Canadian, which I know is pretty rough for all those of us north of the border. So there are a couple Ruike knives that I think are comparable. Obviously, if you're talking about budget folders, you pretty well have to bring in a Rat Model 1. And I will say this will be a bit of a foreshadow of things to come, but since this is a budget flipper, I'm gonna bring in the steel wheel cut jack. And guys, I'm going to tell you that I've been so impressed with this knife. I'm not ready to quite do the review yet, but I'm very close. This is really good, and I think this is going to stick around in the collection sort of as a standard. Like this guy has become a bit of a standard. This one will be the same boat because it's just really well put together. It's lightweight. It flips really well. So if you're looking for a budget flipper, this may be another option. Now, of course, the aesthetics of it are not quite as cool and interesting as what's going on with the Ruike, and there are no bearings in here, so it doesn't close quite as smoothly, but it does flip really well. So there's the steel wheel cut jack. Just for size, here's a pair of two. Obviously, these are not in the same price range, but most people are familiar with the size on a pair of two, so that's always a helpful thing to include. Lastly, let's pull in the Real Steel T109 Flying Shark. Another large Chinese-made stainless steel frame lock. In fact, there are some similarities to both of these are made in the same factory for different companies, okay? Again, you can see that they both have the locking mechanism. The Flying Shark is much, much larger and a bit heavier, so certainly this is going to be for maybe someone who's much bigger. I think that the Ruike knife is a little more comfortable as a carry knife, probably for most people, although you guys know I love large knives, so this one does speak to me quite a bit. So there are some comparisons for you that you may want to consider if you're interested in this knife, or if you already have some of those. That gives you an idea of how this is going to be in terms of size and feel and all of that. So overall, guys, I've got to say, when it comes to stainless steel frame locks, you know, I'm already biased a little bit against them. I've just had a lot of them that I was not impressed with. They're usually too heavy. They, you know, a lot of times they can be slippery in hand. But there are a few, okay? There's a short list of stainless steel frame locks that I would recommend. The Real Steel Puko, the CRKT Fossil, the CRKT Amicus. Off the top of my head, that's about it. The Flying Shark, I'm not ready for review yet, but I think it's probably going to go on that list as well. But certainly I would, without hesitation, include this on the list. The blade shape is great. The comfort is great. The functionality is great. I mean, I can't really take too many points away for any specific thing on this knife. They've really, really done a good job. And in stainless steel frame locks, frankly, it's hard to do a good one. It really is, okay? The deck is definitely stacked against you. So I've got to say, Ruike has done a great job with this guy. And if you like this design, or if you wanted to try out a Ruike knife, I think this is probably their best piece to date. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.